welcome to the local flood analysis meeting from Mount Tremper. Thank you all for coming. This is, again, a very important initiative that we're taking under with the town of Shandaken and our friends with Malone and McBroom Engineering. Know that Malone and McBroom is the town engineering firm. We received a grant through the Shandaken Watershed Stream Management Program to pay for their engineering services, to do studies and look at anything that we come up with tonight here. So any ideas you have on what we can do to decrease flood depths within this community and help make you guys more resilient and save your homes and your property better, please. It's basically, this is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. That's what tonight's meeting is about. This is in the groundwork, and we're hoping that come springtime we will come up with a physical in the stream plan to help make you more resilient in this community. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mark Carabetta from Malone and McBroom Engineering Services, and he will provide you the information on the LFA. So.
Thanks, Rob. And thanks everybody for coming out. It's good to see a good turnout and interest in this topic. I'm going to spend maybe 20 minutes or so just giving an overview, and then we could hopefully have a discussion about, as Rob said, where have been the main flooding problems and what are some suggested solutions that we could look at as we do our analysis. Okay, so the purpose of tonight's meeting, I'm going to introduce our project team. Some of them are in the room here tonight. Just step through the process of a local flood analysis. What are the steps that are involved? There are a number of public meetings. This is one of them. I'll step through that process so you know the dates and what our deliverables are. There's 2 study areas, and I'll show you both of those. And tonight we're focused on Mount Tremper. One of the tools we use for this analysis is hydraulic modeling, and I'll give a brief explanation of how that works. And then the final 2 steps, as we said, we'll get information from all of you about where we go with this evaluation. Project team. This is sort of the core project leaders. Janine Gowan's here in the room, and myself, and a couple others who have a lot of experience in these sorts of studies. We do a lot of hydraulic modeling, and these are the people who do the modeling. Vernon Bevan is here with us. And then a lot of support staff to help us with field work, mapping. Some have expertise on FEMA's rules and regulations, so we have those folks as well. Also closely involved in this project is the SAFARI, which stands for the Shandaken Area Flood Assessment and Remediation Initiative. And that consists of the Shandaken Watershed Stream Management Program, which consists of Ulster County Soil and Water, the New York City DEP, and Cornell Cooperative Extension. And then as well, the town of Shandaken, Shandaken residents and business owners, Ulster County Department of Environment, and our own firm, Malone and McBroom. And we've met several times. We've sort of put a format together for these meetings, and we'll meet again as ideas come up and we have to vet them. The local flood analysis process. We start by evaluating the causes of flooding and what our options are for mitigating or reducing the flooding. As you'll see here tonight, the process includes the property owners, municipal officials, other people in some way influenced or affected by the flooding. We don't start from scratch. We build on a lot of existing information. We have FEMA has put together flood models and flood maps of the area. That both the town and the county have hazard and flood mitigation plans, and we'll work off of those. So that's our starting point, and then we'll put together a full analysis and plan. Each idea that gets suggested for reducing water surface elevations or reducing flooding, we have the ability to assess it using hydraulic modeling. For example, if you take a bridge out, or if you replace a bridge with a larger bridge, if you widen the channel in a certain place, we can model those sorts of alternatives and see if it actually results in any flood relief in some of these big storm events. Once we've chosen our top flood mitigation strategies, we could refine the alternatives, we could vet the costs, and we could do a benefit cost analysis. it's not worth spending $1 million to reduce flooding on one home. But we try and find strategies where the flood mitigation is worth the cost that you put into it because of the reductions in flooding that come out of it. And the end product is an implementation plan. Now here I said there's 2 study areas. This is the Mount Tremper study area, and these are just marked the boundaries out on a map. We do have this drawn out on the maps working with the safari group. I put them on here so you can see where they are. This is the Socus Creek and the Beaver Kill coming in. At the upstream end, it's 3 miles upstream of the confluence with the Beaver Kill, going upstream, and then about 1.5 miles going downstream. So about 4.5 miles of the Socus Creek, and then going up the Beaver Kill about 3/4 mile. Last Tuesday night, we had a similar meeting in Phoenicia, and we spent quite a while. A lot of people had comments, and we were talking about the other study area, which is Phoenicia itself, which also includes the Socus Creek. And in fact, the boundary here at the downstream end, then you get into this Mount Tremper project area, and then going up Stony Clove as well. So why did we select Phoenicia and Mount Tremper? Why were those areas selected? They've been devastated by floods in the past, not just by Irene, but by other flooding events prior to that. Critical infrastructure and businesses and homes still remain vulnerable to flooding. And flood analysis funding provides a unique opportunity to do this assessment. And because it's in the New York City watershed, there's funding available through the New York City DEP to do this work. Over the last century or so, they've been tracking precipitation, and we can see there's been an increase in, the black line represents average precipitation, somewhere between 38 and 40 inches over the last century. You can see the red line represents a trend. It's the average over time. And you can see that in the last 30 years, 40 years or so, there's been an upward increase in overall precipitation in New York. In addition to that, and I'm sure people who live in this area are well aware of this, we've had what seems to be an increase in rather intense or extreme weather events. This map shows the amount of rainfall that occurred during Irene. Sort of, if you go up here darker red into purple, it shows the number of inches with it increasing. And you see, very high levels in Ulster County, and that purple there in Greene County, where the like for example, Stony Clove originates. So a lot of rainfall in a very short period of time. And we look at our gauges. There's a gauge on the Socus Creek located up here, upstream of Phoenicia. This graph, this is time, years over time. This is going back from the current, back to about 1952. And this is the magnitude of the flows recorded at that gauge in cubic feet per second, or CFS. And these are the peak flows that occur in each year. And you can see Irene way up here, 29,300 CFS. These are FEMA's predicted 100-year flow and 50-year flow. So Irene surpassed the 50-year flow. It didn't quite reach the 100-year flow. But you can also see, people sometimes say, boy, I've never seen flooding like that ever in my lifetime. Well, this is why. There's never been a flow recorded like that since at least 1952 of that magnitude at that location. And this is looking a little further downstream, Cold Brook area. This is downstream, and now you've had the Stony Clove come in, the Beaver Kill, and other tributaries. Now we've got 75,800 CFS during Irene. And again, it's greater than the 50-year flow, not quite reaching the 100-year flow. Of course, the damages during the flooding is not just the flooding and the damage to structures because of fast-moving water. There's also a lot of water quality impacts. As cars get flooded, parking lots, propane tanks, and stream banks get eroded and sediments move downstream. We had some pretty major bank failures. For example, on Stony Clove, as the tow washed away, the bank slid down and a lot of mobilization of sediment. So that's sort of a secondary impact of flooding. I want to step through the process of public meetings. Some of these we've had already and others are coming. We started in early September. We made a presentation similar to this one to the town board to kick off the study. And now last Tuesday and then tonight here in Mount Tremper, we're having meetings such as this one. We've got maps, we're gathering information, explaining what an LFA is, and collecting information from all of you. We're going to go back to our office, do a lot of analysis. Vernon and I will be out in the field tomorrow collecting information, and we'll continue to do that. I'll meet with the Safari group and we'll set dates, and we'll come back out, and similar format as this meeting, we'll present to you the sort of analyses that we tried out, which ones worked, which ones didn't, which ones we think we should carry forward, and we'll gather feedback. And then we'll do a final presentation to the town board once all that is wrapped up. I want to say a little bit about the hydraulic modeling. These are just some examples. We've got models for Esopus Creek, Stony Clove, the Beaver Kill. We obtain these models. These are preliminary models, pretty new, fresh models, which is nice that we have these here in many communities where we work. We're dealing with much older models, and the stream channel has changed. These are quite new models based on new survey. This is just one example from Stony Clove, or rather from Esopus Creek. This is the creek in the model, and the model is made up of these cross sections. You see the lines going across. And I'll just show a couple examples of the cross sections. You can see what they look like. It's as if you've sliced the channel, and now you're actually standing in the channel looking at it in cross section. And these are just 4 examples I picked. It shows a couple of the bridges and then open areas of channel. And you can see it's the channel in cross section, and then these lines represent different magnitude floods. And when we come up with ideas for what might reduce flooding, we can try it out in the model by altering that cross section. For example, this cross section has a bridge in it. We can just pull that bridge out of there and see what happens. Does that reduce flooding? We can replace it with a larger bridge. We could try making the channel, say we wanted to make the channel deeper right here or make it wider. See what sort of influence that has on flooding. And this, using the same model, this is a water surface profile. So that, again, it's Esopus Creek. It's flowing on your screen from right to left. This is the Mount Pleasant Road Bridge and the Route 28 bridge. You can see, under smaller floods, the water is passing underneath the bridge. During the larger floods, it's passing over the bridge. You can see the water piles up a little bit here at the Route 28 bridge under larger flows. We'll have that profile for the whole study area, including up Beaver Kill, and we could see what sort of impact different channel modifications have on getting homes and businesses out of the floodplain. I had another thought there. I'm just trying to remember what it was. I just wanted to say this model is a tool. It's one of many that we use, and there's also a certain amount of expertise and experience that go into determining which of these ideas and alternatives are feasible and others are not. It's not a black box. You don't put all your information in and it spits out an answer. There's a bit of finesse, modeling different stream scenarios. And in the end, it has to be something we can permit, something that is cost effective, something that is going to be stable from a river morphology point of view. We don't want to do something that's going to cause the whole stream channel to unravel and cause greater problems in the future. Here are some suggestions for the types of flood mitigation strategies to be modeled. We've done these sorts of strategies in other places. Alteration of the channel itself, whether it's a widening of the channel, realignment of the channel, or creation of compound channels. Floodplain alteration, whether it's reclamation of floodplain, an area that was once floodplain and has now been filled in, or creation of floodplain in areas that are that aren't now floodplain but may reduce flooding if we were able to create a floodplain bench or a floodplain shelf, and then enhancement of existing floodplain. If you can get the water out of the channel during a flood onto the floodplain, you're able to slow down velocities, and reduce sedimentation. In fact, often the sediments are deposited in the floodplain. Bridge replacement, we've seen this to be very effective in some area where bridges are undersized and the water really piles up behind the bridge. If there's homes located just upstream of the bridge around the channel, sometimes the flooding from the stream is because that bridge is undersized. And if you could replace the bridge with either a wider bridge or a higher bridge, that could have a role in reducing flooding. And sometimes that could be done in combination with, say, the floodplain creation scenario. Sediment management, whether it's deepening the channel or widening the channel or removing sediment strategically from certain places where they accumulate, can work. And then individual securement structure treatment, whether it's individual flood proofing, elevation of structures, relocation, taking a voluntary buyout. These are all options for areas that get flooded. So what are the final outcomes of all of this? We'll have a scientifically based engineering analysis. It'll include a benefit cost analysis, so we understand which strategies are viable and which ones are not. We'll provide conceptual design plans for mitigation options. We'll come up with cost estimates, preliminary cost estimates. They won't be design ready, but they will be pretty good cost estimate of what it would cost to enact these strategies. We'll help to identify potential funding sources. And some of the things we will recommend possibly we'll be able to implement right away. Others will say that's just way too expensive. To replace that bridge would cost $12 million. And it's not something we could do right now. But it may be something that remains in town plans, remains in people's minds. And when it does come to be time for that bridge to be replaced anyways, you pull out this analysis and say, well, look, it needs to be replaced with a larger structure. So think of it as both a near-term and a long-term blueprint for flood mitigation. It won't all get done immediately. And it'll give everyone a better understanding of what sort of alternatives are feasible, which are not, what's cost-effective, and what the citizens of Phoenicia, that should say Mount Tremper, I forgot to change that word, find desirable. We'll come up with strategies that may be effective in reducing flooding, and everyone may say, we just don't want that to happen here. That part of town, you cannot make that into a floodplain because that particular business is just too important to the town. It may result in some flood reduction, but it would be at too much of a cost. So that'll be the sort of input we're looking for. At this point, I think I'll take any comments. We won't get into the detailed maps yet, but if there's any general comments on what I said, and also Janine may have something to say.
Yeah, one thing I just want to hit on, because I want to make sure that this comes up if there's any following questions and answers. Many of you are in the floodplain, which means, Mike, blocking you, which means you're paying flood insurance and you're getting flooded. But with a gentleman earlier tonight who gets flooded and gets very little money from FEMA when it happens. One of our goals here will be to shrink the floodplain, get people out of the flood harm's way who are currently in it. And for those who we can't do that, try and reduce the magnitude of flooding. So if you're getting flooded with 4 feet of water in your basement under an Irene, can we get that down to 6 inches? It will lessen the flood destruction that happens to you. It will also lessen your flood insurance. So we're looking at this with an eye of how can we help as many people and as many structures as possible. And that's going to hopefully be a really important thing. Flood insurance is going through, I equate it to healthcare all the time. It's in a very turbulent place right now. Since Katrina and some of the other, Sandy and some of the other disasters that have made, and Irene, that made global news, it's essentially bankrupted the FEMA flood insurance program, which was never funded properly. And so the insurance premiums we're in this little middle ground right now where they're not quite sure how bad it's going to get. I think there's a 1-year reprieve. They're going to go up. They're going to go up in some places dramatically. I've heard double, triple, quadruple. So if you're paying $1,500 a year now, You certainly don't want to be paying $5,000 a year in a couple of years, so it'll absolutely cripple people. So our goal is to get you, if not out of harm's way, in less of harm's way as we can. The modeling that Mark talked about, it tells us a lot. It tells us how high the water's going to get, how fast it's going to move, where it's going to go, and what area it's going to be basically covered by floodwater. So it is a very, very powerful tool, but all of you in this room are very powerful tools too, because you have a lot of information that we don't. Our office is in New Paltz. We spent a lot of time out here. We had probably a dozen people a day in different parts of the Catskills during following Irene. So we've seen some of the destruction firsthand, but we don't, have decades and decades of information. So we absolutely want to hear from you. We want to hear the good, bad, the ugly, the ideas, and then our job is to take all of that and go back and do some analysis, come back and share that with you again, and then together come up with a plan that hopefully puts everybody on a path toward betterment. So that's all.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone have any questions for either Janine or I about what's been said already? Or yes.
Hi, my name's Lee Delvecchio. I live down 28 here on the left, 5260 Route 28. I spent all my childhood summers up here in the creek, in the area. I was here during the construction of 28. I've seen just about every high water that could happen here. During the construction of my house, I went to put up a garage. I hired an engineer who taught the FEMA floodplain management to the DEP, DEC. And when he came to my house and he looked, he told me, number one, I was in the overlay zone. I wasn't in the floodplain. But since then, I'm in the floodplain because FEMA changed the maps. But I'm glad I abided by FEMA because I was surrounded 360 degrees during Irene. And what he told me, and I had never seen a high water come up. I always was either working or out of town, and when I came back, the water was gone. But during Hurricane Irene, exactly what this engineer said was going to happen to me happened. He told me the 28 bridge, number one, wasn't built correctly. The west side has a 200-foot dam. I remember when they built this. I remember the belly drops. I watched them picking up the dirt, dumping it, raising it all the way down to the creek. He told me because of poor stream management and allowing the gravel and the sediment to raise the creek bed, he goes, what happens with the narrow 28 bridge now, he goes, your problem's coming from over there, the 28 bridge, not from upstream. And he was right. I stood there with an umbrella during Hurricane Irene, outside the entire time, and exactly what he told me was going to happen. The water is going to bottleneck at the 28 bridge. It's going to start backing up west and coming back at you and ponding. And once it gets up by your house, the water upstream from you is going to jump up. You have no choice but to go over it. And now the creek gets drastically high and it's out of control. He told me the water would come through there about 13 miles an hour. It did. It was coming around me 13 to 15 miles an hour. I couldn't believe it. But exactly like he told me, it's going to bottleneck. It's going to back up to the west side because of the dam, because the 28 bridge isn't wide enough. And that's what's going to happen. And anybody that's here knows, that's been in the area, you know what the stream used to be like back in the day. Contractors were allowed to take the gravel out. The railroad used to take the gravel out and fix the stream bed. I've got pictures from 1940s and the early 50s that show the land at the house next to me going straight out to the riverbank. It drops off about 5 feet from erosion from years of just neglect. And the water being allowed to come up, nothing was ever done about it. It's, the 28 bridge should be widened. That's a catastrophic expense. But it's like it's like trying to force 5 gallons of water through a bottleneck. It'll happen every single time.
That bridge overtopped in Irene. Had it overtopped in prior floods?
Yes.
What sort of frequency? Because our model shows it
Probably
over
every
time.
10 years, maybe.
Yeah, 10 years.
Every 10, 12 years, you had high water. The house that's next to me was built in 1923. The McRitchies out of Kent, Connecticut owned that house. Grandma Joe built that house in 23. Never had water in it. It's 13 feet lower than the house I built. Hurricane Irene had 3.5 feet of water. The water was up to the bezel on a watt-hour meter. And prior to that, that house never had water in it, ever. But again, the creek was maintained.
Yeah.
The water used to go on both sides of the closed Green Bridge. The Green Bridge that's closed, the rusty one,
Yeah.
was actually the only way out of here. You couldn't get out of the 28 bridge. That bridge should have been repaired. It's an escape route. That bridge has seen everything you could possibly throw at it. It's still standing up. The water never went over the top of that bridge in Irene, but it was going over the top of the 28 bridge. There were tree trunks sitting on top of the bridge. It was crazy.
It just was tree bound, the 28 bridge, and that's what really caused the backup. I mean, it was just.
Everybody who saw it knows it.
Yeah.
You're taking this,
When it
trying to put it through this. It's not rocket science, it's simple math, you can see it happening.
Yeah.
The whole west side is a dam because of, they put 250 feet of earth in there and raised that. They had to raise it 20 feet. It's a levee. They basically built a levee.
Right.
So when the water bottlenecks up, it bottlenecks up to the right side, comes right back at Jimmy Collins and me, and it ponds up and comes right up, and the rest of the creek got no choice but to jump over the top of it.
Even on
Major
212.
flooding. It'll jump over the dike here once that happens. It jumps over this corner and starts going through what's called Riceley Flats. And it runs right through the soccer field, runs right through the stone yard, right down through Jimmy's house. It's, that 28 bridge is a problem.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, I'd like to
It's
go
a
back
big
to that
expense.
profile that showed the bridge.
Yeah.
Can I take this one?
Yeah.
Al? Can I take this?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
Please.
Joe Tizzo, Mount
That's
Tremper.
the profile.
I want to know, we all know what Lee said, we saw it ourselves. Who's responsible for the creek maintenance now? We know the problems that it can cause. They denied even the town. I had a state worker tell us, whoever it is, the DEC or DEC, wouldn't let them go into the creek.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let the town go into the creek. 2 inches of rain, Phoenicia was getting flooded. Now, they cleaned up that bridge down there underneath
Right.
and dropped it down the bed. But the problem is, like they used to maintain the creeks years ago.
Absolutely,
Like that
all the
same
time.
Coast Guard. We didn't have this
All the
type of
time.
flooding before.
Yeah, okay, I want to hear all your comments. When we were in Phoenicia last week, we spent a long time hearing about the need to dredge, and we're going to evaluate that. I just want to keep it in reality. We had a discussion in Phoenicia about someone proposed dredging 3 feet deep the entire length of the study area, which is about 2.9 miles. The width of the creek, that's 100 feet. So I did some quick numbers. That's 500,000 cubic yards of gravel. And that's 18,000 truckloads. No, that's 28,000 truckloads. And that's just a reality check. Yes, material has to be removed from certain places, but I just want to make sure we stay on track here.
Yeah, but if you had a maintenance program, you wouldn't have to do it like,
All at
I don't know
once.
when the last time you was in the creek, but you don't wait till it gets too humongous
Right.
to take out.
Yeah.
You do
so
like
one of the
railroad do it
challenges,
every year, right?
one of the challenges of this stream system is it generates, as you well know, a lot of gravel and a lot of debris, trees and cars and everything in between and boulders. So as Mark says, we're going to look at everything, but to answer your question, nobody is in charge of, responsible for maintaining a stream. One of our challenges is going to be to try to find a combination of things that will be most sustainable. If you dredge out 3 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet along this whole river, you will have sediment that will fill it back in. Might be a year from now, maybe 5 years from now. It's like the ocean. There's an abundant supply of sediment into the system. So one of our challenges is to try to find any number of combination of ways to get this to be as self-maintaining as we possibly can, because we know that there's not an endless amount of money. We know that certain things are going to be very difficult to get permitted and to pay for, and so we'll look